Hey, so it's daylight outside. We got chores done and breakfast in the books, and we're still working on getting this tractor back together. So I had put the phone on time lapse, and it went so fast that you can't see most of the steps of splitting the tractor. My wife told me that, and she's the one that edits all the videos and gives me guidance on how to make them. So she said that wasn't going to be super helpful for anyone who wanted to see how it was actually done. So I'm just going to take a few minutes here and verbally, step by step, through what we did to split the tractor. Obviously, all the sheet metal's got to come off the front. You got to be able to get down to what's underneath there. So wire. So the initial step, you saw the video. The last video that I put out had me taking all the sheet metal, the muffler, the loader brackets, all that stuff came off. So now that all the loader brackets are off, the sheet metal was off, then we were able to come on the closer up stuff, the inside stuff, all the wiring. We had to take, so basically you have to, all the wiring harnesses, you have two ways of doing it. Either you can disconnect it from this end or you can disconnect it from this end, because the tractor is physically going to split in two. So in this case, it was easier for me to disconnect everything from the front end. So we disconnected all the stuff, all the wiring harnesses from off the engine. And the good thing about older tractors, this is what I really like about them, is there's not too much crazy going on as far as wiring or computers or anything like that. This tractor doesn't have any computers on it. I got a few sensors here and there, obviously the charging system and the headlights and stuff like that. But as far as wiring goes, it really is minimal. So that's not hard at all. So take the wiring off, and then next, this one has hydraulic steering. So instead of a physical shaft that runs down to the front axle to steer the steering wheels, it has a hydraulic motor up front here, and then a hydraulic cylinder, a two-way hydraulic cylinder down on the axle. So you have to disconnect that. That's these lines right here. These lines right here. So we disconnect them right here, and they designed these tractors to be split, so they have connections right here. Obviously, the fuel system, you got to disconnect the fuel system. So this is a diesel, so we have the main feed and then a return line. The tachometer's got to come off, your throttle linkage and stuff like that. And then over here, because this, for the hydraulic setup on this one, so this has a reverser. It actually has, inside the transmission, there's a clutch pack, a wet clutch pack. And without going into too much detail, because they're a little bit complicated, but basically it has 4 gears forward and then 4 gears reverse in both high and low range. So 8 gears forward, 8 gears reverse. The reverser is on the main input shaft coming into the transmission, and it basically, through a series of clutch packs and gears, takes the torque off the crankshaft and puts it either one way or the other through the set of gears. So instead of there being a reverse gear, it's using that clutch pack to just reverse the way the power is going through that one set of gears, if that makes any sense. With that being said, this also has the independent PTO, and then obviously the hydraulic on the tractor with the loader and everything like that. This has a cooler, hydraulic fluid cooler. So on this side, we have the lines for the cooler that we have to unhook right here. Other than that, ground cable, and then we have, bell housing bolts through here. So what I do is there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about like 10 bell housing bolts or so, give or take some. But basically, take the bell housing bolts out. But prior to doing that, and this is the part that gets a little rough, they make fancy brackets and skids to split tractors. I don't have those. I've always just done it using 2 floor jacks. But the important part with that is to be able to stabilize the front axle. So tractors have a pivot, obviously, on that front axle. And so for me, what I always do is either I have a bracket. I made a bracket. When I did the 560, I actually built a bracket that fastened to the bolts on the tractor and to the motor to keep that thing from pivoting. But on this one here, it's real easy. I just block the front axle. So I block it on both sides, hammer those in good and tight, and it wedges it on that front axle so that the front part of the tractor doesn't just flop to one side or the other when you pull it apart. And then I use one floor jack under the back of the tractor, like so. And I already took it out, but I use a second floor jack under the front of the tractor and literally just pull the tractor apart. When it comes to putting it back together, that's when it gets a little bit more tricky. This one was easy because I didn't have the clutch part. If I had taken the pressure plate off the clutch, then I would have to realign that clutch disc in there with the pilot bearing, and that can get a little tricky because it's not lined up perfectly. There's aligner tools to put in there, and those help a lot, but it still is not the same as the actual shaft going in. So this one here, I didn't have the pressure plate off when I took it apart because I just needed to replace that throwout bearing. So it was really, I say real easy, it was relatively smooth getting the tractor put back together because that pilot bearing and the clutch plate were still lined up. And so that wasn't bad at all. We're back together. Here after breakfast, what we got to do is finish hooking up some wires and stuff. I think we're pretty close to on our way here. And then, yeah, we're almost ready to put some sheet metal back on this thing, put some loader brackets on, and test it out. So come along for the ride. Here we go. So I'm going to use ether. I know that there's a lot of guys who are going to cringe when I do this. These tractors actually don't have glow plugs. And for whatever reason, International, instead of glow plugs, did what they call it an ether assist. And actually, I'll show it to you here real quick so that you can see it. So basically what it is, the ether assist is this little guy right here. Right here. And you put a can of ether or starting fluid in this little solenoid area here, and then there's a button up here on the dash that you give it one click and it actually puts a shot of ether into the intake. On my tractor, I don't have the small can of ether, and so I'm not able to put it in there, and I haven't never bothered to go and get a small can of ether to put in there. So I just use a regular can, give it a couple totes, a couple of sprays into the fresh air intake, and then we'll go. The other thing that's unique on these tractors is they have this full throttle or this full fuel on the shutoff, which is sort of unique too. But here we go. Let's see if we can get her fired up. All right, here we go. So we got the bearing back in. I took it for a road test, and it seems really good. Got the clutch pedal adjusted right. So now it's time to put the loader back on.